Hello everybody, welcome to another Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&A. So these Q&As are from questions from people who are following the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. And the Deer Dog Training Blueprint is a 15-hour video series where I filmed everything I did to train my own big game indicating dog or deer dog from start to finish. I literally filmed everything I did and explained and demonstrated everything I did and why I did it. And again, that's all in the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. You can find out more about that at biggameindicatingdogs.com. And you can also check us out at Big Game Indicating Dogs on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you're watching a video version of this, you can check out my podcast, the Paul John Michaels podcast, which has its own YouTube channel. And on the podcast, available on Spotify, iTunes, and all the good podcast apps, there's all our Q&As there and some other hunting podcasts and things like that. Right, let's get into it. Max from Australia. The reason why he has a pretty good Kiwi joke at the end of this, so I've got to give Max a bit of stick back. Hi, I'm Max from Australia. I have just purchased the Blueprint and Palmico. I'm going through all the Blueprint videos first before I do anything, as I'm interested in getting my pup to become my deer hunting buddy. So that's something we've talked about a bit. And it's something that obviously the Blueprint is designed so you can just watch part one and then do the things that are in part two, and then once you've done all that, you can watch part two, and even each individual part's broken down into short pieces, 10-minute bits. So it's all broken down so you can watch sort of 10-minute bits at a time. You can easily go back and find the right bit. But having said that too, it is extremely comprehensive and there's a lot of information in there. And while training a dog is kind of simple, it's kind of not either. And there's a lot to it, particularly if you don't know much about it and you want to do a really good job of it. The Blueprint has everything in it that you need to do that. But there's a lot there, and a lot of people, once we got further down the road, creating the Blueprint, and people started using it and watching it, and we started doing more Q&As and working with people and answering questions, we found, and people that have used the Blueprint have said, like, watching well ahead is really good. And really, it's quite an undertaking, but if you're really serious about it, an awesome way to do it is to get the Blueprint even before you choose a pup or dog and watch as much of it as you can. If you can watch the whole Blueprint from start to finish, it's 15 hours, so it's like watching a massive Netflix series or something. Just keep going back to it. It might take a couple of weeks or a few weeks or whatever it's going to take you. If you could do that, so you know how you're going to start off, you know how you're going to train it right through, and then ultimately, if you watch the whole Blueprint, you know how you're finishing everything off and how you are going to begin hunting over that dog and handling it and how you're going to use it eventually in the field. If you watch the whole thing and you understand that whole journey properly and what you're going to be doing at the end there, and then you come right back to the start on day one when you're picking up your pup, you have so much of a better understanding of what you are doing with that pup right from day one, and then step by step on through. So bit of a side tangent there, but I think it's great, and I mean, that's what's been really cool about the Blueprint is people have used it to retrain 10-year-old dogs. Loads of people grab it when their pup or dog is 5 months old, 10 months old, 2 years old, 4 years old, or whatever, and it still works great doing that. But it's even better if you get it before you get a pup. And if you watch a really good chunk of it, in an ideal world, you'll watch the whole thing, and it just makes it so much easier. So Max is saying he's done that. He's got the blueprint even before he's got a pup. Or has he got a pup? No, he hasn't. I haven't got a pup yet, but I'm leaning towards a German Whitehair Pointer or another one. I don't know. I think there might be a typo on that. I would like to know when I do start the blueprint and there's another new young pup, probably a small breed dog, being around the same age of 9 to 18 weeks old, and in brackets, so that he's talking about another family member may have a new pup around the same time in the same household. And that pup's not going to be doing any structured training. When that pup is outside doing whatever it wants and taken for toilet breaks and so on, while my pup is in its kennel and I'm at work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., I'm guessing my pup would be going crazy, barking and carrying on and wanting to come out and play when it sees the other dog in the backyard. Should I be totally segregating my pup so that even in its kennel it can't see the other pup, so they both can't even get to each other at all? Maybe build a temporary fence in the yard, or mock up another neighbour's fence, or mock up like another neighbour's fence, if you know what I mean. What's your thoughts on how to work that situation? Also, the Q&A are great, and the inner circle people are also great. It's a good community of people. Cheers for all the work you're doing, Paul, and sharing the knowledge, even if you are a Kiwi. Oh, good bit of trans-Tasman ribbing there. I like that. Thanks, man, and I'm glad you're liking the whole setup. It's great, and the inner circle is awesome, and that's made up of people who are following the blueprint. It's a closed Facebook group, and everyone's in there just swapping posts and ideas and questions, and it's really good. Okay, so the situation of you getting a pup when another family member's got a pup that isn't going to be trained, you're going to be following the blueprint, you're at work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Yeah, there's a few different things there. Hopefully, if you're at work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and someone else is going to be home letting their pup out to run around, that you can get them on board a little bit, and they can let your pup out for toilet breaks and things as well. And also, hopefully, you can get them on board, because I have had this question before, and we've talked about it. And I mean, this sort of stuff is so subjective to the particular situation, right? So, because there's no trouble whatsoever with other dogs being in the same household while you are putting a pup or dog through the blueprint. That's fine, Print was raised. While I had Print, I also had a whole bunch of boot camp dogs coming and going the whole time. There was often 6 or 8 other random dogs that were turning over every 6 weeks. There was constantly new dogs turning up and old dogs leaving, and some of the new dogs turning up were pretty full on, and quite often Print would be in his kennel as a pup, and there'd be 6 or 8 dogs running around in a dog-proof area, just not going fully nuts. But they would they'd have a pretty good run around and play. They were having freedom sessions, and we'd keep it all within reason, as per how I've talked about it in past Q&As with freedom sessions and basically common sense and keeping it within those reasonable parameters. So just to cover that off, it's absolutely no issue having another pup or another dog, or, we've had a lot of people follow the blueprint in all sorts of situations. People training a deer dog on a deer farm, and loads of other dogs around, and cats, and you name it. And it all comes down to common sense, and And 100%, you know, other people in the same household that might be letting your pup out or taking it for a walk, or there might be other dogs around. If for whatever reason they're just not on board whatsoever, and this other pup or dog's just is quite chaotic and full on and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and this other person in the household just is not going to come to the party whatsoever, 100% you can have issues. Having said that, though, it's not necessarily as important what your pup or dog experiences with other people within reason. Like, there's things like if someone was shooting a gun around your pup before you've done proper introduction to gunfire, then that's an issue. If someone was letting your pup off the long line and out of the kennel so it can run and chase stuff before you've done all your steadiness work, then that's an issue. Those types of things. But if it's, again, rules, boundaries, and limitations, you know, and reasonable common sense, if you are nailing your training and you're putting the long line on and before the pup steps out of the kennel, and you're doing all your in part one early on, it's pretty chill anyway. We're not doing any compliance work early on with a young pup, and you're just sort of linking actions with commands and all that sort of stuff. But if you're nailing that, and then you get to part 2, 3, 4, and you are doing compliance work, and you're doing more drills, and you're doing your walks on the long line, and you're doing all the training that's in the blueprint, which is a lot of stuff in there, a lot of little step-by-step stuff. But there's another pup in the household that is sometimes that pup's out while your pup's in the kennel. But if you've set up your kenneling right, your pup will be capable of sitting in a kennel. If you follow all of the principles from the blueprint, your pup is capable of sitting in a kennel while another dog is out of the kennel running around doing something, even playing a bit sometimes. You know, that's okay. Or if you leave for work early and you get back late and someone leaves after you, or they get back before you, they let your pup out with their pup, and your pup and their pup has a reasonable freedom session for 10 to 20 to 30 minutes. That's okay too, and that's actually great. And if someone else does that, someone else gives your pup that freedom and exercise, and then you get home and put the long line on, and you're sort of the more structured guy that, hey, when the boss turns up, now we're game on. That's actually that can be quite a good setup. It could go one step further where someone else that's in the household with the pup might put their pup away for 10 minutes, let your pup out on a long line, and they might not be doing the full-on structured training, but they might just give your pup 10 minutes out of the kennel. That would be cool. They might even get more involved with the training, you know, take your pup for a 20-minute walk, whatever. So all that stuff's great. And again, they don't have to be like watching the whole blueprint with you, knocking it all out of the park. Just as long as they're not doing anything crazy, and then when you turn up, you do a good job of it. What isn't cool is stuff like someone comes home and lets your pup out, and it spends like 2 or 3 hours just running riot. Who knows what's going on? And that type of thing can have a massive impact. That's one of those things, you know. It's like I've used the analogy of diet versus working out, you know. There's that old saying, you can't outwork a bad diet. You could be running every day and going and lifting weights all day, every day, but if you're living off McDonald's and KFC and fizzy drink the whole time, you're not going to get lean and healthy. It's two opposing forces. Yeah, you're working out, but you're eating like absolute crap. So your shitty diet is going to offset the hard work you're putting in with working out. That can be the same with dog training, and I've definitely 100% seen cases and know of cases of this where someone's been trying to follow the blueprint quite well, and other people in the household are not on board. And it can be a little bit of a weird one too, for sure, where you get a situation where one person's following the blueprint, it's all full on. Other people are sort of like, don't really understand it, aren't on board, haven't watched it, aren't into hunting, don't even know what a proper deer dog is. And they're sort of like, oh, what's the deal with this whole blueprint thing? What are you even doing? Like, calm down. And that people are even like sort of sneakily letting the pup out to run around and play more because they think they're overdoing it in training, or they don't understand it, which is kind of screwing it all over. And then the person's getting home from work and trying to train, and then they're messaging me, hey, I'm doing all this stuff, I don't get it, my dog's just it's not picking it up, it's not working the way that you show in the videos. And there's all this other underlying stuff of the dog's getting way too much freedom and chaos, so training's a low priority activity. 100%, if there's another pup playing around, but you've done all your kenneling right, a pup should be able to handle that. And, again, Print, there was other dogs running around while Print was in his kennel, and all the same principles. If he arced up, started barking, I'd put pressure on him. It was all part of him. That's part of kenneling. Kenneling, good, proper kenneling and crating and separation isn't the dog can manage to be sort of quiet while in a zero distraction environment with nothing going on. Proper kenneling is the dog is quiet in its kennel while, I'm in town now, so my dogs have to be quiet in their kennel while neighbours' cars are coming and going, neighbours' dogs are barking, the mailman turns up, and all the stuff's going on. So same with Print growing up. Out where I was out in the country, part of his kenneling was learning how to be quiet in the kennel with a dozen random dogs coming and going and training and barking and doing retrieves on the lawn and all sorts of stuff. But again, it's all it's all in the context of the situation. Then if my pup's Print's trying to be in the kennel, and there's a pup like barking at him, running up to his kennel, barking at him and trying to play with him through the fence, then that's not going to work. So there's all these things, man. And it can be anything from you raising and training a pup or dog on the blueprint with other people in the household and another pup. Could be anything from a complete frickin' shambles to an awesome situation where they're helping you out, and who knows, maybe they might be able to pick up a couple of pointers from the way you were raising and training your pup and seeing the way that turns out. We've had that a lot. I spoke about that in a recent Q&A where we've had that a lot, where we do get that. I get that when I'm like out on the beach and I've got Miko on the long line because I'm doing a certain phase of training with her, and someone comes walking on the beach with like 3 dogs that are just running everywhere, and they just come barreling up to us. And it happened last night when I was going trout fishing with my boat, and I was actually at a boat ramp with a wharf and a massive sign saying all dogs must be on a leash. So I left my dogs in the truck. I launched my boat, tied it to the wharf, drove right around to another grass car park, gave my dogs a run and a toilet break there, put them both on a leash, and then I was walking past the boat ramp and down the wharf to my boat, and a guy said, oh, there'll be a German Shepherd come running up to you soon. And I'd already seen his dog. There was about a 7-month-old German Shepherd just off leash running around at the boat ramp. And he said, they're all sitting around having beers, and he said jokingly, oh, there'll be a German Shepherd come running up to you shortly and he'll be fine because he's really playful with other dogs. But but I was on a metre-wide pier wharf with 2 dogs on leashes because that was on the sign. And so there's me, 2 dogs, both on short leashes, and now I've got this German Shepherd, only 7 months old, but he's probably like 30 kilos. And then he's running up to us real full on, climbing all over us, getting tangled up in the leads. Miko actually got pushed off the wharf into the water. Not even kidding. And I'm just saying nothing. I'm just deadpan, just basically waiting for him to. And then he's like yelling at me, hang on, you'll have to wait because otherwise you'll jump in your boat. True story. Happened last night. And I've been in situations like that where people are getting pissed off with me. I'm saying nothing. I'm just like standing there holding the lead, and he's waiting, and he's coming to me because he's yelling at me to wait. So I'm just standing there saying nothing. He comes over, gets his dog, and then he starts talking to me about fishing in the boat. He's not even registering that what is happening may be the slightest of a problem. And I've been in situations like that, like at the beach with dogs or at the park, and my dogs are on a lead and other people's dogs are running up, getting tangled up in the lead, and the guy's yelling at me. Like, I've had people legitimately get pissed off. Let your dog off the lead. You're on the beach. They don't have to be on a lead. Let your dog, like almost having a go. Like if I argued back and we got into an argument, it could actually turn into an altercation, all because I'm walking my dogs on a lead. I'm trying to do the training. They have no idea at all, and even the slightest way of what I might be doing. And they have no idea about what their dog is doing, how much of an issue that is for what I'm trying to do. What I'm doing has zero effect on them. What they are doing has a massive effect on me. That's the big thing, eh? When if you have a dog under control on the beach, that has zero negative effect on anyone else. If you have your dogs under control, zero effect on anyone else. It's the dogs running around, all chaos, running up to people. This will come up later on, by the way, because we get into quote-unquote socialization here in another question. Quote-unquote well socialized. So this guy with the German Shepherd at the wharf, literally knocking my dog off the wharf into the water between the wharf and my boat and getting tangled up. And Miko's freaking out, like nipping at him, basically saying, get out of my face because you just knocked me off the wharf, literally. People call that well socialized, when in fact that's like completely ridiculous. And a well socialized dog is a dog that could be in a situation like that and just ignore the other dogs and ignore everything and just be normal and go with the flow of the situation. Well socialized is also, basically what Miko and Print are, that he come running up to us. They didn't bite or get aggressive or run and hide. Miko bared her teeth and just did like a dummy snap at him, saying back off and calm down, again because he just knocked her off the wharf. But because this dog was just being way too much for the situation. And so that's not necessarily well socialized, and we'll get to that later on. I'm digressing massively here. But what I'm trying to say is the gap between someone that's watching the blueprint, listen to all the Q&As, and is serious about training a good big game indicating dog versus that guy at the wharf or the guy on the beach, literally he's pissed off with the fact that my dog is on a leash. The gap in the two sort of frames of mind or levels of understanding of what's actually going on is so vast. It's so huge. And it can be a problem in households, and it can be a problem in training, and trying to explain it to some people and get them on board can be very, very difficult, and it can be a huge issue. But also, that's the extreme end of the case, okay? But also in 95% of situations, it's actually very easy, and it doesn't take much for someone around the house to let your pup out and not completely screw it up, and have a pup in the household that isn't following the blueprint, that isn't a massive hindrance to you. It really can be. It's obviously way easier for it to be the latter, where you just follow the blueprint and they don't completely screw you over while you're doing it. But wherever it lands on that scale is dependent on the situation. So I feel like it's a massive sort of circling around, and I've given you but that's a scale, and it can land anywhere in that. Those are the two extreme ends, and that's most of the ins and outs of it, you know. I don't. You talk about segregating your pup and this building a fence and stuff like that. I don't know. If you have to do that to make it work in the situation, then maybe that's what you have to do. But I think it would be kind of ridiculous if you had to do that. You definitely don't need to do that as long as the situation's reasonable. I hope that helps, man. And I'm trying to think of an Aussie joke here, but you know, I think you'll be fine. George, hi Paul, in part 8 at 11 minutes 50 in the complete parts, you make some sort of brief hand signal to print after you say good boy. Is that a hand signal for praise? Yeah, it is, but I'll explain it in a second. Excuse me. He said, I never noticed it before, and I don't think you've ever talked about this either. Cheers, George. Yeah, cheers, George. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. By the way, I jumped in to find this. This is how good the new setup of the blueprint is. We've got the 12 parts all broken down into parts, so it's like chapters, you know, and you go into part 1 and you're looking at like 10 videos there, and each one's got a title like choosing a pup, picking up the pup, kenneling, basic commands, you know, and each one of those is like 10 minutes, and you just go into it, click on it, and bang, you're watching that one little part. But then off the end of that, so I've got the 12 parts all broken down into parts, which play automatically one after the other. Then we also have the entire part, so you can just press play and the whole part will play. Because you gave me the time code, part 8 at 11 minutes in the complete parts, it literally took me like 15 seconds to jump in, open it up, and go straight to that exact part and check that out. So I jumped in, had a look, and I see exactly what you're saying there. It's a good question. I didn't mention it at the time, but what I was doing is actually mentioned in the blueprint, and that's that part. I think I actually spoke about it in I've spoken about it in quite a few Q&As. I bring it up when people are like getting pissed off with the dog and it won't go slow, so they're yanking on the long line and giving it turns, and everything's all about pressure to try and slow the dog down, when often pressure and turns and checks is an important part of getting your dog to be attentive and slowing down. But always, both sides of it, right? We use pressure and praise, and the praise is just as important. And what I'm doing there is print. That was the first time ever, right, with print off the long line. And I'm being quite dramatic because it's his first time ever off the long line, and I want that we talk about first exposure in the blueprint. I want the first exposure to go well. I want to nip it in the bud and get it sorted and keep things smooth. And I think it was the first time off the long line, and I stopped walking, basically going for an automatic stop, and Print just kept walking, and he was quite chill with it. He was just sort of trotting off, quite happy just to not look back and break his range. And I went, cut it out, and turned around. Commanded disapproval, change of direction, and then walked the other way, turned back around, tried again. I walked slowly, Print walked slowly. I stopped, Print did a beautiful automatic stop. I continued walking slowly, and Print just dropped into this real nice slow walk, holding his range. Really nice awareness of me and his peripheral. And that, I said good boy, and I held my hand out and just sort of rubbed. I'm doing it on the video. I rubbed my fingers and my thumb on my fingers, basically just indicating for a pat. Do you want a pat? And we talk about that. I can't remember what part or what the title is of it, but we talk about the principle of pressure and praise is basically pressure on what we don't want, praise on what we do want. And what we do want a big game indicating dog to do is walk nice and slow and close to us and keep their range. So I want to praise them when they're walking nice and slow and close. And I want them to be very comfortable walking close to me with their back to me, which isn't necessarily a naturally comfortable position for a dog to be in. Generally, when a dog's facing forward and you're walking behind it and your feet get very close to the dog, they're like, shit, this guy's catching up to me and about to stand on my heels, and they speed up a bit. So you want that's just a natural thing for a dog. And when cool stuff's going on, dogs just want to move forward. So that whole range thing and having a dog comfortable being slow and close right in front is sort of a constant thing that needs to be maintained and managed and sort of enhanced with any dog. And part of that is that once we've, and a huge part of the blueprint is all about training that nice and slow and close right in front. When you get it right, and every dog's a little bit different with it. I've had dogs, a heading dog of mine that I had before Print, Indy. She was between Fly and Print. And she was just a hard case little dog, and she picked up the whole staying slow, close thing very, very well. And I remember at one phase of her long line training, she had a big bushy tail. And I remember at one phase of her long line training, she went through a phase where she'd often be walking so close, her tail would be touching my shins as I sort of stepped forward. And she'd sort of trot forward and then and her tail would always be wagging, or just waving side to side as she's walking, and then she'd sort of slow down until she felt her tail touch my shins, and she'd sort of shoot forward a couple of meters and slow down, and then I'd touch I'd touch her tail, and she'd do that. So that's a really good example of a dog that's got real comfortable staying real close, and that's obviously potentially a bit too close, but that's going to stretch out later on, and you're just getting that really well set up. And a big part of that is, and what's ideal, and this isn't the blueprint, we talk about it and show it, is when the dog does drop back and just goes nice and slow, and they're doing exactly what you want, they're doing what we want, and we want to put praise on that. And it's really cool if right when everything's perfect and the dog's going nice and slow, you don't want to, you can overpraise and you can sort of distract the dog from the good thing that it's doing. So the dog can just begin to do the right thing and you go, good dog, make this big fuss. And the dog will spin around and just be so focused on you and the praise that it forgets what it was just doing, and the whole thing's a freaking waste of time. That's why we always talk about measure being so important. It's always the minimum amount of pressure or praise required to get the job done. You want to just get the idea across without cancelling out what is actually happening. And it's always the minimum amount of pressure. You don't want to use too much pressure because it's negative. And you don't want to use too much praise or you just distract the dog away from what's just happening. So when the dog's walking nice and slow and close right in front, I'll choose those key times exactly like that, like at 11 minutes 50 in part 8. And I'll say, good boy. And if I can hold my hand out and do that, good boy, and I'll rub my hand together like that, or I'll rub both hands together. I'm basically saying, do you want a pat? Good boy, do you want a pat? And I definitely don't want the dog to turn around and walk back to me. All I'm doing, and this is what we show on the blueprint, if the dog can stop, still facing away, and I walk up and just like pat him on the bum, good boy, and he'll just stand there looking back at me, receiving the pat. Half his mind is he still wants to keep walking forward, but he's happy to stop, and he literally knows I'm stopping him to pat him because I'm happy with the way he's acting at the moment. That's freaking perfect. The minute the praise gets too much, good boy, and he turns around and comes back and he just forgets about walking forward. And he forgets about the whole range and everything. It's too much. If you only put pressure on your dog every time they pull away, but you never praise them and make it positive when they're walking close, that's a sketchy spot too. You want to put pressure on them when they walk away and then make sure they know they're doing the right thing when they're close. And that's exactly what I was doing there. It's pretty cool that you picked that up because it was quite a subtle wee thing, but actually quite key too. And Print ended up getting there quite nicely with that, and that's what we showed in the blueprint. Again, I can't remember exactly. If someone could chime in the comments or something on this and let us know where that part is in the blueprint, that'd be cool. Again, there's like hundreds of little moments like that in the blueprint to keep track of them all now. But it's definitely in there, and I do that with Print to this day, and that's actually one of those things that I have to remind myself to do. When I'm out in the bush, I can be putting pressure on Print to when he goes too far out, and then once he drops back, I'm just focused on hunting and all of that. It's quite important just to take those little moments when the dog drops back, and you've got to notice those little moments, and it's quite easy to just focus on when the dog's doing the wrong thing and put pressure on that, and then just carry on about your life while the dog's doing the right thing. But it's quite important to recognize those little key moments when the dog is doing the right thing and praise them for that. And that never stops, That's sort of that constant maintaining and trying to enhance the positive stuff as well as cancelling out the negative stuff. And yeah, I do it to this day with Print in the bush. We'll just be hunting. Every now and again, I just look down and think, man, he's close. Everything's going mint. This is awesome. And we have a little moment in the pat, keeping it positive, keeping that relationship there and all of that. This is also George. George says, also in the last Q&A at 38 minutes, you started talking about how pups and dogs need to know if someone or something can get pissed off. And you said you could talk about this topic for ages. Can you please do so? Ha ha. I definitely can. And this is definitely a better Q&A for that. I had a lot to cover in that last one. George said, I'm very interested to delve deeper into the psychology there if you have the time. Thanks, mate. Yeah, so and that's what it is. It's that it is getting into the deeper psychological side of dog training. And this is really getting into evolutionary psychology. And this is based in some really solid science too. and it's based off what scientists have observed in wolf packs. And many dog trainers have drawn from that and been aware of it and applied it or kept it in mind in dog training and when putting together dog training systems and so forth. What I meant by that is, so in that comment I was talking about how, like last Q&A, we had a guy that was having a lot of problems and he was getting really frustrated and he was doing a lot of talking about putting pressure on things and getting really frustrated by a 14-week-old pup and how it was just getting worse and worse. But he wasn't really talking about praising it or positive or anything. It was just like, man, I'm just getting super pissed off here and a lot of conflict with this pup. And I talked about loads of things in that Q&A. We've had a few comments about that Q&A too and a couple of messages, but people basically saying that that was one of the best Q&As we've ever done, and that's what often happens, and that's what I said in that Q&A. Like, this is a lot, but this is some of the most important stuff when someone's getting really unstuck. And I end up having those big, serious Q&As. That's what actually brings out a lot of the best stuff. But in that, I just made a fairly quick passing comment that as George said here, in the last Q&A at 38 minutes, you talked about how dogs need to know if someone or something can get pissed off. And I said I could talk about it for ages. So, in scientific studies, it has been noted that often the most successful leaders of the biggest, most successful wolf packs are some of the most lenient leaders. So there's a few things with the important things and really interesting things for the dog trainer to note with the way a wolf pack structure works. One of the most interesting things is that the wolf, and it makes 100% sense once you hear it or read about it and study it and then think about it. The leader of a wolf pack doesn't come in and take over and boss everyone around. That's not how it works. And if you think about it, some of those wolf packs, I don't know, I could probably do a quick Google search here. What's a massive wolf pack? Let's Google biggest wolf pack ever made. The Druid Peak pack of 37 wolves may be the largest pack. So there you go. The biggest wolf pack may be the largest ever documented was 37. So you could say a decent sized wolf pack is like 20 wolves or something, 10, 15, 20, 30, almost 40 is a big pack. So how is one wolf ever going to come in and take over and basically be like, somehow act in a way where all the other wolves think that they better listen and follow it or it's going to beat them up? It's one wolf against 20. Like, it's just not going to happen. The leaders of a wolf pack aren't wolves that basically force all the other wolves to follow them. They are the wolf that the other wolves choose to follow. And that comes about through things like a wolf that always finds the food. If there's a wolf that, when everyone's laying around in the evening and it's cooling off and everyone's hungry, and some wolves get up and wander around and hardly ever catch anything or find anything to eat, but one wolf's a little bit better at it than everyone else, then who do you think the wolves are going to want to follow when all the wolves get up and start walking around looking for food? It's the one that's the best at finding it. And they're literally just, they're not even, they're following it trying to get its food. It's just common sense. So food-wise, they just follow the one that finds it most reliably. So that becomes the leader of the hunt because it's best at it. Some of the other things are, well, first I would say with danger, it's whoever's the best at avoiding it first. So when a dangerous situation happens, could be, in smaller wolf packs, it could be, or in a group of younger wolves, it could be when older wolves come over, or the lone rogue wolf, by the way, is a real thing. They actually exist in the wild, and that's an interesting thing too. Because it we'll probably circle back around to that. But and I'm no expert on this, by the way, wolf packs and stuff. I don't want to carry on like a freaking wolf scientist here, but I have looked into quite a bit of it and found it pretty freaking interesting. And it's always made perfect sense and lined up with the way I've seen. And dogs are 99.98% wolf or something like that. Their DNA is basically exactly the same. And we're only talking, I think, some of the oldest dog breeds, and some of that, this is like super remote and way off, is like 30,000 years old or something like that. Wolves, I don't know how long wolves have been around. Dogs have literally been evolving for millions of years. How long have wolves been around? Wolves come from Eurasia between 70,000 and 24,000 years ago. I did delve right into this because I spoke about it in a video once, and someone like corrected me on some dates and times. They sort of misinterpreted what I said, but so I did a massive research, and I basically worked out that while the wolf has been around for, that says 70 to 35,000 years. Hi guys, hey, I'm recording this actually just after the podcast. I just wanted to jump in here and say this. Straight after this podcast, I opened my phone to look up something else, and it was still open on the wolf thing. The wolves coming from Eurasia between 70 and 24,000 years ago, that's just wolves coming to North America. Next article down is that the first grey wolf, Canis Lupus, probably appeared in Eurasia somewhere in the early Pleistocene period, about 1 million years ago. About 750,000 years ago, sorry, this is just loading. Oh, it's just loaded a massive. Yeah, so this is talking about wolves in North America 400,000 years ago. It was about 5 foot long and 50 kilos. So there's loads of stuff, guys, but this is what I've found. And I've actually been fact-checked on this before. I spoke about dogs evolving over millions of years, and someone flipped out on me in the comments and said that dogs have only existed for the last 10,000 years, but then there's other scientists that say that the earliest dog was 30,000 years ago. But when I say dogs have evolved for millions of years, I'm talking about evolving from wolves. And wolves were wolves at least 1 million years ago. And once you get back that long, people are just like, yep, we've found one that is at least 1 million years old. They don't really know what happened 1 million years before that. It's just the best guess based on what they've currently found. And it's still constantly changing what we know about wolves and dogs. But I just wanted to jump in there because I said about wolves being 35 to 70,000 years old. They're actually at least 1 million years old as a wolf. who knows how long they were actually wolves before that, let alone how long they evolved from whatever they evolved from. So the whole evolutionary process is literally millions of years. Just wanted to chip in and say that. Back to the Q&A. It's longer than that, but for the wolf to evolve from whatever they evolved to there is millions of years to get to the wolf. And then all the dogs basically in the world today are 99.98% wolf. And all of that has happened in sort of the maximum of what I could find anyway, last time I looked, was a maximum of 30,000 years ago, which is like the blink of an eye. 30,000 years in the course of evolution is nothing. It's like 10 minutes. And a lot of dog breeds are far younger than that, far younger. You know, you're talking 1,000 years, a few hundred years. You know, it's just nothing. So if we look back at wolf packs, the leader is the one that's really good at that everyone follows because they're the best at finding food. They're also the one that is the best at getting away from danger when danger turns up. So who is the best at getting away and not getting killed or beaten up? The next time something sketchy goes down and that wolf gets up and runs, all the rest of the wolves follow that, or at least the smart ones do. The dumb ones probably die, but that's the way it works. And then the one of the third major things is once you've eaten, once you've gotten away from danger, then if you can't get away from danger, who's the best one to step up and actually face danger and take it on? Who's the bravest and when they do step up to fight the lone wolf or the crazy buffalo or whatever the hell's going on, who can actually step up and pull it off? So, you know, those are the main things. Basically, who's the best provider and protector? And then all the other wolves basically follow them or rally in behind them. And one of the last and arguably most important things is a lead wolf can be the best hunter, great at avoiding danger, great at stepping up and beating up the bad guy when the bad guy turns up. But then if you're dangerous to be around at all at any time, you forfeit all the other stuff and it doesn't matter anymore. Meaning if you're a great hunter, but every now and again you lose the plot and kill a member of the pack, then none of the wolves want to follow you. Or if you're just a grumpy ass wolf and you get pissed off at everything and you're unpredictable and dangerous to be around, no one wants to be around you and they won't follow you. So that's what I was getting at. And coming back to evolutionary psychology, which is a real thing. It's like a whole branch of science and psychological science, and Google evolutionary psychology. It's pretty freaking interesting. If you look at evolutionary psychology, which again, there's loads of science. This isn't just some dude. There's people that are way smarter than me have worked all this stuff out. I just get little bits and pieces of it here and there to try and help me work stuff out. If you look at evolutionary psychology and the fact that wolves took millions of years to evolve and dogs come from wolves, and there's, you know, while 30,000 years isn't that long, so a lot of those mechanisms and psychology is all still there in a pup or a dog, be it tamed right down or however you want to look at it. It's still all there, man. You can't get rid of it. Humans have a lot of evolutionary psychology and cognitive biases and subconscious biases and the 24 subconscious biases in humans. That's a really interesting thing to look into, to sort of just begin to touch on how psychology actually works and subconscious stuff and cognitive biases and things like that. And dogs have a lot of this stuff. And again, a subconscious bias is something that causes you to have a certain reaction or a thought or idea about something. Where does that reaction or thought or idea come from? More often than not, it's coming from our subconscious biases, which is all from evolutionary psychology. And the point I was making when I said a pup or dog, even a really young pup, is evolutionarily, psychologically tuned and evolved to just constantly be testing and working out where everyone is the whole time. They're constantly, that's what all that testing is seeing how consistent are you? Are you a good leader? Are you competent? Are you diligent? Every time, some dogs are easier and harder than others, but that's why they'll constantly test and get up off the stop or push their range or do this or do that. They do test. I've heard that thing of dogs do not have the ability to take the piss or to test. You know, that it is true that it's nowhere near it's nowhere near their forward thinking and reasoning and rationalization and working things out and premeditating stuff is obviously minuscule compared to what we would do as humans, but it's still there. And I would actually argue that usually when they do that, most of it is just subconscious and they're just doing it. And it's not premeditated. They're not thinking about it consciously. It's just part of what they are. And they'll constantly test. And but one big part of that, on the one hand, they're making sure you do have enough of a spine to know what you want, make it clear what you want, and then frickin' stick to it too. And talking about consistency and diligence and dog training, that's why it's so frickin' important. And that's why really good dog trainers fairly quickly arrive at a point where the dog just listens because they know what they want. They know how to communicate it to the dog. They are very clear with it, very consistent, and they're fair, and they make it positive for the dog. And the dog's just like looks at the whole situation and goes, this person's a competent leader. And they just listen, and they're freaking happy to do that. That's actually what they want. That's actually what a pup or a dog wants. They just want someone to step up, sort everything out, and take over, and then they just swing in behind, figuratively speaking, and just follow you. Because it's way easier than being the lead wolf out the front that always has to find the food and face up to danger and be switched on thinking the whole time. They'd way rather just swing in and follow. And it's so true. But again, a massive side of that too is you can be as consistent and all of that and clear or whatever you want. But if you're finicky and fly off the handle and get pissed off all the time, you just go down in the rankings so much in a dog's psychology that it just ruins everything else. And they actually, I believe, a pup or a dog is actually sort of subconsciously, evolutionarily, instinctually set up to resist and not want to follow or listen to or be under the rule of anyone that's off in any one of those areas, be it sort of competence or consistency or diligence or discipline or being clear, knowing what you want, making it clear and sticking to it, and being level-headed and calm and not overreacting or being unpredictable. Because any one of those things for millions of years of evolution was all the last person. You don't follow people like that. You don't follow wolves, and if you're a wolf, you don't follow a wolf like that. You don't survive, and that's part of I believe in evolution, and there's a crap load more science for that than there is anything else, and that's what evolution is. The wolves that follow the smart wolf live, and the ones that don't die. And so you get more and more wolves that are likely to be a good leader or follow a good leader, and that's how evolution works. So those traits get stronger and stronger, and the shitty ones just fade out. Yeah, it's quite a deep topic, relatively complicated. What can be, it depends. On the other hand, it's not that complicated at all, and there's a lot of common sense there as well. It basically comes down to dogs, to boil it right down to pups and dogs need to know if someone or something can get pissed off. Pups and dogs don't follow a leader because they think they'll get in trouble if they don't. They follow the best leader that will give them the best life, and a leader that is unpredictable or gets pissed off easily is not a good leader. And that's why a pup or dog wants to know if their leader will get pissed off, and they'll test for it. And they basically don't even know they're doing it, but they're testing for it. And if it starts to happen, then they test for it more. But if it never really happens, they sort of forget about it and stop even looking for it because it's not there. I hope that makes sense. It's a again, in a lot of ways, it's a relatively simple topic, but it's also difficult to sort of explain in a lot of ways. Cameron, not sure I've missed it, but you have talked about socializing with other dogs, etc. I know you introduced children, etc., but there's nothing really mentioned in that pre-12-week-old period everyone seems to think is so important. Well, yeah, I mean, in part 1 of the blueprint, man, I show you how I introduce print to fly, and I show and talk about freedom sessions with other dogs, and I've talked about it a lot in Q&As. These are my notes. Main thing is it's not as important as people think, and what a lot of modern mainstream dog trainers and vets call quote unquote socialization is frickin' terrible and an absolute stuff up. And I'm not saying that guy at the wharf with the Alsatian had been to puppy classes, but if he had, that's the exact sort of thing that they do. And it's just like, right, we're doing socialization. Everyone let the pups and dogs off the lead and they just go hard. And that's what it creates, is a pup or dog that just runs up and goes hard out like that. That's not what I call socialization. Socialization for me would be 100%. It's part of it is getting your dog around other dogs, so it's been around other dogs, so it knows what they are, and it's not just this weird dog that's been locked away in the kennel and kept away from other dogs the whole time. But socialization definitely isn't just your dog just goes bowling into all situations. And last night's a classic example where, wouldn't it be easier if that guy's dog had just been there and he could have said, one, when it's knocking my dogs and almost me off the wall, and it's like a drop into the water. Miko dropped like 2 meters off the wharf into the water. It was just like pretty sketchy. And with a lead on, mind you, and all that. Wouldn't it be good if he could have just said, told his dog to sit and said, hey, can my dog come and say hello to your dogs? And when he gave it the go command, it just sort of come over normally, and they met instead of like bowling in and getting wrapped up in leads and jumping over us and backwards and forwards and around and knocking. It's just chaos, Like, imagine if a person done that. And there's all these people on the wharf and you were just like, oh, my kid's around here. He's probably going to come and say hello soon. And there's like 5 people on the wharf and someone's kid just comes running in and it'd be like the equivalent of someone just coming and doing the windmill with both arms and just knocking people off the wharf and all that. And someone's like, oh, hang on, my kid's probably going to jump in your boat. So I'll tie him up and drag him away. And that's like, oh, see, he's really well socialized. It's like, no, he's not. He's freaking crazy. That's honestly it. Like, it may seem like a ridiculous thing to say, but that's what's happening here, and that's what some people consider socialization. And often puppy classes and what your vet's telling you, they're not a dog trainer, they don't know, but they're running puppy classes. Sometimes, to be frank, be 100% honest here, often it's frickin' ridiculous. And when you turn up to get your shots, they're like, oh, do you want to do puppy classes? And now you're doing puppy classes and you've got someone it's a puppy class, so you think it's dog training, and they're like, we'll do this and we'll do that. And then people are just off into the world like, we've been to puppy class, we've done dog training, our dog's socialized, and let's go. And man, the issues people have is insane. So, what is well socialized? That's one of my notes here, and it's not that. It's not a 7-month-old Alsatian knocking people's dogs off a wharf. My next note is the main issue you see with quote-unquote socialization, what people call socialization, which is not socialization, is no manners and no control. So the dog's got no manners. It doesn't just cruise up and say hi. It runs in and tangles up and knocks over, and it's way too much. It's way too much. And, at the extreme end of the scale, it ends up in dog fights or, young dogs getting overcrowded and knocked over and over submissive, and then it can cause behavioral problems in other people's dog. Your dog running up like that and knocking dogs over and stuff like that can cause psychological issues with your dog, the dog that's been run up at by other people's dogs. Dogs running up to each other in overconfidence. It's not good, man. There should be manners and a bit of control. Should be able to say, sit, wait, don't run up, or away you go. And when you say away you go, it's, yeah, they can run up and run around and play, but it's not tangled up in leashes and knocking each other over in chaos. It's approach, be normal, say hi to each other, work the situation out a bit, and then run around and play. And another key is when you want to go, you should be able to go, here, Print, and walk away, not, hang on, sorry, I'll just come and get my dog, and you're like dragging it away with a leash. It should be, you should be able to say, well, sit, stay, and come. Stop, stay, and come, or stop and go. Is basically what it is, isn't it? And a recall, stop, go, recall. And that goes with socialization. How many people can't make their dog stop, go, and come when there's other dogs running around? A lot, And to me, that's not properly socialized. And the main issue I see by far with socialization is lack of control and manners. And that's why in the blueprint and the Palmico Dog Guide, we lean more on the control and manners, because it's very rare that I've seen someone have an issue with a dog, whether it be no control or aggression or being timid or something like that, because, oh gosh, I just never got my dog around other dogs. So now my dog's crazy and aggressive and timid with other dogs. I've basically never seen that. It's always the other way around. In both the blueprint and the Palmico Dog Guide, we do talk about introducing pups and dogs to other dogs. And again, in part 1 of the blueprint, in part 1, I show you about how I introduce Print to Fly, and it's all done on the long line with control and manners. Have a look at that, part 1 with Fly. It's quite important because that's that sort of first exposure and getting it right the first time, doing the worst first and all of that, instead of just a massive free-for-all. My final note is that's why in the blueprint and Palmico Dog Guide, we lean more into control and manners than quote-unquote socialization. I hope that makes sense, man. It's sort of all there, but the main takeaway there for me is you say something about in that pre-12-week-old period, everyone seems to think is so important. I definitely agree that even then it's arguable, man. That you don't forget your pup is born in a litter of pups, born to another dog, its mother. And yeah, I definitely don't think it's a great idea to take a pup straight out of a litter and have zero pup to dog contact in those first. Well, man, you're talking, so you shouldn't. Ideally, a pup doesn't leave a litter until it's 8 weeks old, and you're talking pre-12 weeks. And when you say, but there's nothing really mentioned in that pre-12 week period everyone seems to think is so important, that whole quote unquote everyone seems to think is so important, you need to be more specific than that, because I don't know what you're talking about. Who said it's so important? And who's everyone? And another thing, well, first of all, pre-12 week in New Zealand, your pup or dog isn't properly immunised until it's either 12 weeks old or 16 weeks old, so you can't do it anyway. And 100,000,000%, you don't need to have a pup. If you take it out of its litter at 8 weeks old, you don't need to have it around other pups or dogs until it's 3 or 4 months old. And I think there's actually a really good argument to be made for it's. I think you do. I think you don't want to not take it out of the. You want to not take it out of the litter and just keep it completely sheltered from other pups and dogs the whole time. I think you want to introduce them to other pups and dogs the way I show you how to do it in part 1 of the blueprint, and it's all through the Palmico Dog Guide as well. Doing it in a controlled way, so your pup or dog gets to meet other pups and dogs, be around them. You don't need to do tons of it either. You really don't. And but it should be done in a controlled way with control and manners. But I don't think there's any issue with picking your pup up at 8 weeks old and not doing anything until it's 18 or 20 weeks old, and and it's getting used to the lead and long line. And then, I mean, if you live anywhere in town, it's basically out of your control, and you have pups and dogs in your face the whole time. If you live out of town and you're in a situation where if you don't go out of your way to introduce your pup or dog to other dogs, it's never going to meet them, then I think it's a good idea to do that. But I don't think it's a serious issue. If say you pick your pup up at 8 weeks old and you don't get it around other dogs until it's 4 or 5 months old, I don't think that's an issue at all. What is really important is the way it goes down when you do introduce them. And what isn't good at any age, no matter what you've done, is when you go out and your pup's 2 months old, 3 months old, 6 months old, 6 years old, and other dogs are just bowling in, like this Alsatian. That's not good. Maybe that's what they think good socialization is you do all that full-on socialization until you've got a dog that's just so full-on around other dogs that no matter what happens, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the psychology of your dog because it's so freaking full-on around other dogs. But I don't think it's a good solution, because that whole free-for-all chaos that's where so many crazy issues come from. And a dog that's more reserved, that I have control over and manners, I've never had an issue with my dogs and other dogs that my dogs have initiated. I've never had it. Never. So yeah, there's a rant. There's a rant on that. I've just got a Kill Cliff drink in this cup. If people are hearing it's basically a sugar-free energy drink. It's bloody good, actually. If you're hearing my ice rattle around and stuff, it's not rum and coke, if that's what you're thinking. Although rum and coke would be quite good. Well, hi Paul, how do I teach an older dog to walk in front? He's been taught to not pull on the lead, so he stays very close and is not keen to walk out in front. Yep, know what you mean, dealt with it heaps. I think I've spoken about this before in a Q&A, but your solution to that is a pole lead, man. I think it is best if you can do it without a pole lead, just with a long line, and do whatever you can, push the dog out in front or take it out into a fun and interesting area where it's more likely to lead. Forget about it walking in front for a while. And because, sometimes if you first get an older dog, or you're really trying to switch gears with an older dog that you've had for a while and it's got the super sticky heel, and I used to do these boot camps quite a lot. The first few days can be quite stiff, and the dog will be reserved, has no idea what's going on, and it'll just want to keep in behind. And if you just stay chill and relax and just keep walking the same route and make it fun and interesting and lighthearted and positive, pretty freaking rare that the dog won't eventually walk out in front one day. And then if you praise it, and you can push them off in front a bit with a long line too, get them going and get the ball rolling. And that's definitely my preferred way of doing it. And again, pretty freaking rare that I couldn't get a dog walking out in front just on a long line. But every now and again you'd have one that and sometimes, it was never the exact same thing. Some dogs they'd want to take off out in front, and if you put any pressure on them, they want to go in behind. Or some dogs, you couldn't get them out in front. They just didn't want to be out in front, or whatever it was. All these niggly things through different ways that they'd been trained or handled in the past had made it very difficult to easily get that nice, smooth, close walk out in front that we want in a deer dog and a big game indicating dog. And the pole lead, just, it can be really freaking good. And the last one, one of the better ones I had was half of a 12-foot graphite 2-piece fishing rod. I broke the skinny end of it. So the butt end was 6 foot long graphite pole with like mean phone grips at the end. And you tie a short, imagine just cutting about the end meter to 600 millimeters off a long line. So you've just got the running loop in the end, and then that's the best one I had. But then the last one I built, I've still got it here, and I used it. I've been using it with Miko, and we filmed it, and that it's going to be in the Deer Dog Boot Camp video series. I think it was called a long garden tool handle. I think that's what it was called. I got it from Mitre 10. I don't think it's quite 2 meters long, and that 2 meters, that longer length is really good, but it still works. It works fine actually, and it's just a long. It's like a like a long handle rake or like a hoe handle, or it's like a long skinny broom handle. Got it from Mitre 10, drilled a hole in it, got that. You have it quite short. It's probably barely a meter, 600 mils. My guess, about 700 mils or so. It's hard to say because you've got to have the loop as well. You'll work it out how long you want it. You want it shorter than the broomstick. So you basically have a very short long lead on the end of the broomstick, so you can put that around the dog's neck, and the lead's shorter than the broomstick, so you can gently push the dog off out in front with it. And if the dog tries to come back, you can actually go, again, linking actions with commands. So with that, I would be giving the command and half a second later gently pushing the dog off, away in front with the broomstick. And I'd go push and step and walk myself. So I'm matching the command, the double peep, or whatever you want your go command to be. It could be, okay, walk, go. Double peep is a real good one. That's what we use. A double peep whistle's great. If you can't whistle, say, okay, away you go. So, away you go, little push off with the pole lead, and then start walking yourself. So there's the command, the cue to the dog, pushing in the right direction, and then your body language stepping forward and moving, and all of that linked together. You very quickly get the dog walking in front. The pole lead can be an intimidating and confusing bit of gear for a dog. So you have to be very careful and gentle and understanding with it when you're first starting off using it. Generally, the type of dogs that you have trouble with walking off in front are more the quieter, timid, lower confidence ones. And I have had a couple that I've been having serious trouble getting them walking in front without a pole lead. And the beginning of doing it with a pole lead has been freaking difficult too. And I've had to be very patient and careful with it for a number of days until I've got it and it started smoothing it out. I'll say this too, a dog that will be relatively easy to get walking fairly well in front with a long line. You put a pole lead on it, and it's just click of the, like they're walking in front perfectly straight away. And you've got that lead, so you can hold them out there, but it also works. They can't pull away either, and you can also use, because the key is with the lead is you don't want any tension on it, right? We talk about that a lot. The whole blueprint is showing you how to use a long line without ever having tension in it, because it's only there to use and put tension on at those key moments, change of direction and slowing a dog down and things like that. The pole lead with that, say, 600 or 700 mil of slack on a 2 meter pole, if your dog tries to drift to the side, you can gently pull it back to the center. If it tries to drift back, you can gently push it forward. If it tries to pull away, you can gently pull it back. And every time you correct the dog, you can just go straight back to a slack long line, and you're using that pole, that broomstick, to keep it slack. And then the short string is very, very light because it's only half a meter or so of our 4 mil long line cord. Very, very light. So, but because it's short and you've got it on that pole, you're never in that situation where you have to take up all that slack of the long line. The correction's right there straight away, just a little tap. And then you're instantly back to slack again. So as far as reading and timing, they're amazing. And that's why I'm covering them off in the Deer Dog Bootcamp video series. I definitely didn't need them with Miko, but I didn't use them often in boot camps, but when I did use them, they were freaking great. And it's also something you want to get away from quite quickly too. Any tool that any tool, that's why I don't like using treats, or I don't like using e-collars, and I'll use pole leads the least amount as possible. And the long lines, the whole goal of the long line is to literally use it in a way where the dog is the least aware of it as possible, and we're only using it at key times, and we're not holding tension on it and all that sort of thing. I don't like putting these big things between me and the dog. That's this huge noticeable thing that has a drastic influence on the dog's behavior, because all I'm ever trying to do is get the dog to the point where it's watching me and listening to me. I don't want this big thing in between that the dog gets used to relying on that or responding to that instead of me, So as effective as a pole lead can be, they're really freaking good. But I'm always using it for the minimum amount of time required to just get the idea across, make it easier on the dog to get to the next point, and then get rid of it and back on the long line, Those things like that can be a crutch, but exactly that thing you're dealing with, an older dog that's been taught to not pull on the lead so he stays very close and is not keen to walk out in front, pole lead can be absolutely gold. Gold. I put it on my story a few weeks back, and a couple of people messaged me and like, I saw that, that's a good idea. And then they one guy was just having a little bit of finicky stuff with his dog that he was putting through the blueprint, and he put him on the pole lead for a few days, and he said, man, it just smoothed everything right out. So yeah, that'll be handy for a lot of people. But that's it, everyone. That's another Q&A. Thanks for the questions. Again, I encourage the questions. The feedback we've got on the last Q&A is a real, really shows how, those difficult questions are them, and the difficult answers are the most important ones, So some good ones there today. Evolutionary psychology. It's super interesting and all that stuff, and linking it to dog training and all that's really cool. Thanks to everyone that signed up to the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. Thanks to everyone's hard work in applying it correctly and training good dogs and going out and hunting and sharing photos and all of that. That's sort of what grows this whole thing and makes it successful, is you guys applying it all and sharing that experience, So thanks to everyone that's signed up to the Palmiko Dog Guide 2. You can find out about all that stuff at biggameindicatingdogs.com. Big Game Indicating Dogs on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And you can check out my stuff, my personal pages at Paul John Michaels on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. For general dog training, non-hunters, we have our Palmico Dog Guide video series. Basically all my same dog training and principles, but for non-hunters. And yeah, just check out, there's a lot there. And check out the Paul John Michaels podcast. There's all the audio versions of these Q&As, loads more Q&As, and the podcast that I've been doing with Ben May, Bam, on hunting. There's a lot of subjects there. Hunting, how to find hunting spots, guns, ballistics, butchery, hunting gear. There's loads of stuff there. And we did one with Dwayne Sweeney on marlin fishing. And we're sort of always adding to it. So that's the Paul John Michaels podcast. That actually has its own YouTube channel where we just put the non-dog training ones up there, the Paul John Michaels podcast on YouTube. But everything, all of them go on the Paul John Michaels podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and all the good podcast apps. Thanks, everybody. See you later.